Yet another country has been engulfed in a wrath of protest, that is the United Kingdom. And it is right now not important to discuss who are the active participants or who are inflicting the wrath or inflicting harm on the immigrants or the other communities which are there, which are being targeted. All that is, all that needs to be known is that just due to misinterpretation, misinformation, and spread of rumors and false information, these have been targeted. It all began in the northwestern England city of Southport, where three little girls were stabbed to death, and the culprits have been held. Particular community has been held accountable without reason, without any appropriate cause or evidence, and that has spread like wildfire into nationwide protests. But the important thing is we have to discuss about the political system. Now, a lot of talks have been coming about. You might have heard this word, this far right movement. What do you mean by, what do we mean by right or left? What do we mean by democracy? What do we mean by parliamentary system? What allows, what gives the freedom to for the people to protest in the first place? Now, if you have conduct such kind of behavior in countries such as China, you will not survive for long. Rather, you will disappear. But that is the essence. We have to discuss what exactly lies. What do you mean by far right? We often hear in news as since the protests have started that these far right groups have been advocating this and supporting this violent protest and whatnot. But what exactly constitutes far right? In other governments which have been formed, Italy, France, also there have been major gains by the far right political parties. So basically, we are going to indulge and understand, dwell upon that protest parliament and the Indian connection. I'm not talking about any kind of Indian connection with the protest. We are going to discuss the Indian connection in terms of the parliamentary system. We know British ruled us for 190 years, starting from the Battle of Plassey in 1757, and the parliamentary system, the Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha, the bicameral legislature, the executive, all this system is primarily India has borrowed from the 1935 Government of India Act, which the British promulgated when they were ruling here. So, first of all, what do we understand by democracy? Democracy, you might say, okay, for the people, by the people, to the people. In one line, if I want to explain, democracy is a form of government which derives legitimacy from the people and ascertains the popular opinion or opinion of the people through mechanisms such as elections. They can be direct or indirect. Now, what is parliament? Parliament is a form of democratic government where the executive is held accountable to the legislature. So, in these two lines, I have explained the crux. So, let us move forward. First of all, the interesting part, as I always say, what is the United Kingdom? So here I'll just mention a few places. So basically, this part, first of all, this pink country, this pink area is the country of England. Okay, this is Wales. This is Scotland. Fine. These are individual nations. Okay, so like England capital is London, Wales capital is Cardiff, Scotland capital Glasgow. Okay, so this plus this forms the Great Britain. These three countries together. If we include this turquoise colored area, which is another nation, Northern Ireland, if we include this nation in this also, then it becomes United Kingdom. And when we include this entire area, including the various little isles or islands, then it is known as the British Isles and largest. So basically, this is England, this green, this pink plus blue plus orange, this forms Great Britain. These three plus turquoise colored Northern Ireland, this forms the United Kingdom. So they are countries, independent countries. They play football, Harry Kane of England, Gareth Bale of Wales, who has retired. So these are, but they are run by common policies. They have a common prime minister. Earlier, Rishi Sunak was there. Recently, after the elections, Keir Starmer of the Labour Party is there. And this is a separate country which is not part of the UK. This is the Republic of Ireland, capital Dublin. The capital of Northern Ireland is Belfast. Okay, so Belfast also has witnessed a lot of protest over the incident, what has happened recently. And some other, we have Isle of Man, these are the territories of UK. Then we have countries, this we know, Olympics were held in this country, France. This is Belgium, this is Netherlands, this is the Strait of Dover, the Dover Strait, this is the English Channel, this is the North Sea, and then we have countries like Norway, Sweden, Finland. Okay. And here we have Denmark, then we have Germany, and so on. So, this is an interesting. Many people don't understand what exactly is meant by the United Kingdom. So, a reference has to be given. Now, another interesting part, the location of the various cities where the protests have manifested and they have magnified in intensity. So some important cities I'm going to discuss with you. First of all, if we consider England, so London, then Nottingham, Leeds. If you watch club football, so there are also English Premier teams or clubs named after them. Manchester United, Southport, where the stabbing took place, it is here. Then Birmingham, the Commonwealth Games of 2022 were held here. Then Cardiff in Wales, capital of Wales, Bristol, Southampton, Plymouth. So, and Belfast, the capital of Northern Ireland. Again, remember it is a part of UK, not Britain. So these places have been the epicenters of the protests. Now, the political system. This is something interesting before we come to the basic similarities and differences between the Indian and the UK political system. So there were two groups initially, Whigs and Tories. These were two factions which hold their relevance to the 18th century, but we can trace their origins back to the Glorious Revolution, which took place in the late 17th century, that is 1681, around 1681. So the basic is the basic difference was that to these Whigs, because we know British or United Kingdom is a constitutional monarchy. It is a democracy where in place like we have the president, there we have the monarch, which is ceremonial position, just like the president is not as powerful as the prime minister. President is known as the head of state, but the head of the government is prime minister. President takes decisions, signs the bills, proclaims ordinances on the advice of prime minister and the council of ministers. Okay, so that is, we'll discuss the differences. So basically Tories, they wanted to maintain the status quo. They were the proponents or avid supporters of the continuation of monarchy or the continuation of the hereditary rule of the kings, whereas Whigs were the proponents of the parliamentary system, greater representation for the people, the establishment of democracy. Then Glorious Revolution took place in which the Tories accepted some of the ideals of the Whigs and they agreed to the establishment of the constitutional monarchy. Not the exact abolition of the monarchy, but constitutional monarchy. Then the evolution, it took kept on taking place. Then we had other concepts also, like conservatism. Conservatism was a concept you might have heard of this person, Benjamin Disraeli. Then we have the liberalism. William Gladstone was one of the proponents. So these again reformed and is continued. And finally, the two major political parties in UK, we have the Labour Party and the Conservative Party. Don't worry, I'm going to explain each and everything as simply as possible. So now Labour Party is often connoted or often recognized with left leaning and Conservative Party right leaning. So till recently, the party in power in UK before the 2024 elections, the people like Rishi Sunak, Boris Johnson, Liz Truss, who lost their seats, they belong to the no, Conservative Party. Okay, they are the right wing party. Labour Party is more about reforms, more about revolutions, more about equality. Conservatives, as you can see by the name, they are more traditionalists. They want to maintain status quo. They want to enhance the private freedom. They want to encourage development of private property. But these are in today's world. Earlier in the before this period in the 19th 20th century when we had the Soviet Union, the communist China, so they at that time the left and right philosophies were properly appropriately demarcated, but now they have become quite blurred. We'll discuss that. So basically UK, I have already said what is parliament has a two house system, House of Commons and the House of Lords. House of Commons, it is similar to the Lok Sabha or the lower house as exists in the Indian parliamentary system or the Indian legislature. So that House of Commons. So right now the leader, the Prime Minister like Keir Starmer there, and here Prime Minister Narendra Modi is there, who is the leader of the coalition of parties which hold the majority in the lower house. So it is a two. In House of Lords is equal. We can consider it equivalent to the Rajya Sabha. The major difference is here in the UK, the House of Lords does not represent the individual states or union territories, unlike the Indian Rajya Sabha or the upper house, but it consists of bishops, hereditary peers, and other such members. Then Prime Minister heads the executive branch of the government for 5 years, same as here. Devolved governments and powers. So, although UK as a whole is has a political parliamentary system, but like India, several states, we have three tiers at the center state and then municipal or panchayat level. There, the governments have transferred power to individual countries also. Like we have the Scottish Assembly, the Wales Assembly, okay, the Northern Assembly of Northern Ireland. So that devolution or that powers, because they also need some individual powers. The entire thing cannot be done by England or UK as a whole. Okay, so this is the basic thing. Okay, so we have already discussed in brief about Whig and Tory. So 18th century, Whigs were seen as supporters of Parliament, Roy and Tories were the supporters of monarch. Okay, so this is the debate, just illustrations. And Glorious Revolution, 1688, Tories accepting some Whig ideals, but basically they wanted to stick with constitutional monarchy, so they wanted to have retain some component of monarchy. Fine. So later on, Tories came to be identified with merchant classes, Anglicanism, then administrative groups. Whigs were the include the aristocratic landowning families and wealthy middle class. But slowly and gradually, the Whigs, they were weaned out or they became insignificant. The Tories majorly came to be identified with the UK political system, and gradually concepts as we have discussed initially, the concepts of conservatism and liberalism came into picture, and finally we have the two major political party classes, the Labour and the Conservative Party. Okay, so now the interesting thing left. So now what is this left and right? Basically the origin was the idea came from the French Revolution. So there was a distinct, drastic, crass division between the noble classes, the hereditary king and monarch. You might have heard of Louis XVI and his infamous wife Marie Antoinette. who is famous for saying let them eat cake. Then later, after the French Revolution, this he was executed. Anyways, so there also there was in the assembly which they had. So the people or they were clustered into two groups. So the middle classes or the people, the oppressed classes, they used to sit on the left side. They wanted to attain revolution, they wanted reforms, they wanted equality. And the people on the right, they wanted to maintain the tradition or the status quo symbol and to retain the monarchy. Obviously, they wanted to retain their benefits. They didn't want to pay any taxes. They didn't want to work hard. The entire burden was to be shifted to the left. So there, that is the concept from which this party system, these terms originated. Okay, rise of conservatism and liberalism. Okay, so Tory used to designate the conservative party. Like we have discussed, Tory was monarch, proponent of monarchy, unlike the Whigs. Then political spectrum, majorly as left and right. I have drawn another diagram which I'll show you in the next slide. It is much complicated than that. No government, especially in a government like India, which has a multi-party system, which has tremendous, immense diversity, no particular party can be exactly said to be left oriented, left or right. They can have a particular orientation towards the left or right. So, like BJP, it is often said to be right oriented party, although like a lot of people have called the current government, the current leaders dictatorial in nature, right wing and extreme nationalistic chauvinism, but that is not true. If that were true, the kind of protests, the kind of dharnas, the kind of revolts which we witness here, that would not have been possible. So it is not a dictatorial government. We have freedom. So that is the hallmark of democracy and a parliamentary form of government. Then right supports protection of individual freedom, less government regulation, lower taxes, private sector competition. Okay. Left argues for government regulation, higher taxes on the rich, robust welfare system of the poor. Now, if we say that the current NDA government is right oriented or the BJP as a party is right oriented, it does not mean that it is only going to favor the private property. Obviously, government regulation is there which is required. Modi government's formula of minimum government, maximum governance does not include that, like allegations are there, he supports Adani, Ambani, and so he has promulgated or promoted inequality. The disparity is always there, but it does not mean that he obviously poor related schemes he always has promulgated or let out for the like Bijli Yojana, for Pradhan Mantri Kisan Sinchai Yojana, then for the Saubhagya Yojana, for the poor people, subsidies are there. Okay, the Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana. So they are not for the rich people or the better off class. So it's blurred much more in the context of countries like India. Otherwise, like we have parliamentary system, they're common in countries like Australia, Canada, India, UK. Okay. So similarly, left also, like I said, these days, in this time and age, the boundaries are blurred. Left does not mean, like, for example, in India, we can consider the Left Democratic Front coalition, which leads the government in Kerala, to be left oriented. But that does not mean that it is going to distribute the sources between the rich and the poor evenly, or it is not going to consider merit, or it does not promote the formation of private freedom or individual freedom of private property. That aspect is there, but it has a left inclination. So that is important to be understood. Okay, so this is a diagram. I'm not going to discuss all the terms, but basically this is important. So if we make two axes, we make four quadrants. So here by symbols, right? This symbol denotes the growth of private property, individual freedom. Okay. And here basically the roti kapda makan, the welfare, distribution of wealth. But these used to be in the earlier ages, in the 19th or the 20th centuries. So some examples I have given, and there on the y-axis, on the vertical axis, we have authority, dictatorship, and here complete liberty. So of course, authority means the leaders, the executive have chief control. They will gag, they will control media, they will not allow individual freedom, they will not allow any memes to be framed on the leaders or the prime minister. So that is not the case in India. Okay, so you might have witnessed already memes over the arrival of Sheikh Hasina. So I'm not going to discuss. And liberty, where there is absolutely no government control. And here we can see left hand. So if we combine these, then we get four quadrant. Okay. So here, like this indicates the important folk dance, Kerala, Kathakali. So democratic socialism. So it is slightly inclined to the left. Then here, if we see US, so it is basically free market liberalism, the laissez-faire policy. New conservatism. This is also another policy. This is recognized when the US was involved in the Vietnam War and in 2003, the Iraq War during the time of George W. Bush. Okay. And BJP or like government of Atal Bihari Vajpayee, we can say lies around here. Under Modi government, we can say is somewhat further right, but it is not exactly right or left. Then Congress, we can say, is more of center oriented. There is a general perception, but it is very difficult to give or provide one particular terminology to a political party in India. Then fascism, we're not going to discuss here. Italy, during the time of World War, not now. Communism, the common ownership of property, China. But now we know China has also import export earlier during the period of Zedong. It was a closed economy. It was very it was not exposed to globalization or liberalization, but now we know that how far Chinese economy has it has grown exponentially, and that is because it has opened its economy to the market forces. Government regulation has decreased. So these are just examples. Then here, if liberty is increased, obviously government regulation is very less or negligible. Then anarchism. These are also political philosophies or political systems. Then here, extreme liberty, but in the right side, freedom. Then we have like libertarianism. Okay, so we are not going to. Then here, if we go towards the left, authority, welfare state, liberalism. So these are different philosophies, but we are basically concerned with the left and right axis of the political spectrum. Okay, so UK political system, some we have already discussed. So earlier, quite few years back, major parties were Labour and Conservative Party, but now we have the advent of new parties like the Reform UK Party, the Liberal Democratic Party, and in 2024 also they have seen great significant achievements if we talk in terms of the electoral growth. So, what has led to the recent abrupt change in 2024, where the conservatives they have suffered, Rishi Sunak has suffered great defeats. Labour Party is not in power. So we have Brexit, immigration concerns, COVID-19, cost of living, healthcare crisis, Ukraine conflict, inter-party conflicts. Boris Johnson was also, if you have been following the news regularly, he was accused of violating the COVID-19 rules. He was involved in conducting some party or other. So, lot of scandals have been there. So, this election is not, it is said in UK, the change in government. Why it is not pro-labor but anti-conservative. Okay, so that is how the citizens have voted. So, conservatives right, Labour Party on the left. So in India, it is a much more complicated picture. Then how it has abruptly changed, the reasons are there. Then other emerging parties, these you Reform UK, Liberal Democratic. So currently, like in Lok Sabha, we have what? There was a battle for 543 seats. The exact count is 552. But in the House of Commons, in the British Parliament, there are 650 seats. So out of that, majority obviously went to the Labour Party. Then this Liberal Democrats, they secured 72 seats. Reform UK, they secured 5 seats. So they witnessed significant gains. Okay. So this I have already discussed. Support towards alternative party. So many like Liz Truss lost their seats, Conservatives after their defeat, and then the Labour's victory attributed to dissatisfaction with Conservatives handling the cost of crisis and all we have already discussed. Fine. Now India UK ties, because ultimately our our ultimate goal is to reach the similarities and differences that India's parliamentary system holds with the UK parliamentary system. So, first of all, now what has been the issue that currently, till recently, recent government like Rishi Sunak and then Boris Johnson, they have started delinking themselves from the India Pakistan bilateral matter. There was a time during the last decade there was government under Jeremy Corbyn, so there were continuous references or inferences towards the Kashmir issue, so the relations have always been underwhelming. But recently, they whatever the Labour Party government has done, the improvement of relations in India, so the current government, Keir Starmer's view or effort aim is to continue that progress further. So we have the cyber partnership, 2+2 dialogues, the FTA, free trade agreements. Okay. Majorly, India's demand is to provide acceptance or provide easy access to the markets, to the skilled laborers, to the service sector. And UK, on the other hand, wants India to reduce customs duties, tariffs on products such as Scotch whiskey. So this again, anti-immigration protest and all these have made the current situation very complicated. So UK delinking of ties, FTA, fine. So interference in India's internal matters was there. So new strategic, so there have continuously leaders are making efforts, but we also, because the parliament, it is by the people, it has obtained legitimacy from the people. So if the people's concerns are not addressed in a positive way, whatever be the reason of the protest, rumor or misinformation, whatever, the government or the leaders have to resolve that on a priority basis. Okay, the parliamentary system, a lot has already been discussed what is meant. So it is a democratic form. Executive branch is accountable to the parliament, to the legislature. So basically, one common similarity between both UK and India is that PM, along with the Council of Minister, if they lose the confidence of the Lok Sabha, they are responsible, accountable to the Lok Sabha or the lower house. If they lose confidence, then they have to resign. Okay, and PM is usually the head of the government. Along PM, he is the leader of the majority of his own party or the party in coalition, like NDA is there. Okay, and cabinet, PM, Council of Ministers, they are responsible to the Lok Sabha, and PM is usually head of the government. Then the role of parliament: enact laws, control finances, amend the constitution. There are checks and balances also. Then Indian parliament, also known as Sansad, bicameral, two houses, upper and lower house. We have already talked about it. Multi-party system. So this is just illustrations. Advantages: responsiveness. How? It is responsible. The executive is responsible to the legislature. If it loses confidence of the members of the Lok Sabha, it has to resign and another government has to take its place. Flexibility: whenever some issue occurs, whenever some policy law has to be made, so it can be done. And executive power: it is responsible to the legislature, but executive is in major control. Then, of course, father of the Indian Constitution, one of the major architects of the Indian Constitution, Bhimrao and Ambedkar. So now, similarities. So we have already talked about the existence of constitutional monarchy in India and UK. In place, the position is ceremonial. The only difference is there we have a king or queen in UK. In India, we have the president, which is a ceremonial position. But the difference is we'll study later also, because this can be also used to discuss or come arrive at the differences. President of India has much more greater powers as compared to the head of state or the ceremonial monarch position in UK. Then both have bicameral parliament. Government is based on majority party rule, responsible to the Lok Sabha, responsible to the House of Common, and both systems exhibit checks and balances. Okay. Now another interesting part. We are approaching slowly towards the end. The UK, actually it is supposed to be the dissimilarities between the parliamentary governance system of the two countries. So in UK, the parliament is sovereign and supreme. There is no concept of judicial review, unlike in India. There is no concept of the basic structure of the constitution, Keshwananda Bharti case. So, whenever a person feels that his or her fundamental rights have been violated, he or she can knock the doors of the High Court, Supreme Courts. So that is, it does not have a written constitution, UK. Whereas India, the checks and balances constitution along with the judiciary, they establish significant checks on the misuse or abuse of power by the executive. So that is there. India's head of state, the president, is elected for the term of 5 years. There it is a hereditary position, the monarch. Okay. UK's house, they consist lords, House of Lords, the upper house. We have already discussed. It consists of hereditary peers, the bishops, and such people. But here in Rajya Sabha, to represent the diverse geography and culture of the country, the Rajya Sabha represents the states and union territories, and also the elections to the Rajya Sabha. The members of the Rajya Sabha are elected by the members of the state legislative assemblies. Fine. And in UK, the speaker normally renounces when he's elected. He or she is elected. He or she renounces his or her affiliation with that particular party from which he or she was elected. But in India, you might see like we have currently the speaker is Om Prakash Birla. So he hails from the BJP. So here there is no concept, no such compulsion of this for the speaker to resign from his political party. Then whip system, you might have heard of this. That in India, when we have to vote on any particular policy, there is a particular rule book or guideline that all the party members or party MPs have to follow. That they have to vote in conformity either for or against. There are rules such as anti-defection law, or if the party members or the MPs they don't follow the whip or the instructions to how to vote, then they can be removed from the party. There is no such system of in UK Parliament. They have slightly more freedom in exercising their conscience while voting. Then India has reserved seats from marginalized community. There is no such reservation or no such particular system. Although reforms in UK is a more uniform structure. That is one of the reasons why this multiculturalism, which was this globalization, maybe now citizens they are becoming afraid that going to use their culture or nationalities, or they are going to get into minority. But till now, these are more rumors. These protests are based more on rumors. So we can see that this diversity is more. Democracy is more vivacious, more vibrant. But then again, it is a flexible democracy. It has not only based itself on the parliamentary structure of the British government, but it has taken the constitutional measures or the constitutional instructions from various other countries. Like here, we don't have a proper federal structure. As in the US, there the elected executive is the president, directly elected. And there we have proper demarcations, a proper division of powers between the states and the executive. But here, federal power, devolution of powers is there. There, the states have their state list is there, concurrent list is there. But there are some issues, some laws, some categories in the constitution where laws can be made, they can be overridden by the central government. So that is a structure which has been taken by from Canada. And then for trade and commerce, that provisions in the constitution they have been taken from Australia. So here we have the quasi federal structure, not the exact federal structure. And then emergency provisions have been taken from the Weimar Republic, the erstwhile Germany. So it is because that is why we are the largest democracy. We have the most extensive constitution out of all the countries in the world, because there are so much that is there is so much diversity to represent in India. There is so much plurality to represent, to recognize, to give opportunities of equality and equity. So this is, but again, there are again shortcomings. The disadvantages are there. Normally when we have the coalition governments, although representation is now there, but you see that when the parties, they jump into the well of the house, then there are walkouts, they don't allow discussions. And in the first Lok Sabha, it was, I've read that the average duration or the average days for which the parties or the Lok Sabha met was 175. In the 17th Lok Sabha, it has drastically decreased to 55 days. And apart from that, the criminal backgrounds of lot of elected representatives or MPs in the Lok Sabha. So these are things which have to be sorted out. So we should be glad, we should be proud of our democracy, we should be proud of our country. We should not do anything which is not in the interest of our nation. So that was a brief discussion of UK, the protest, the India Connect. Hope you found today's session enlightening and fruitful, beneficial. So till we meet again, Jai Hind.